Maya Brooks thought how hard work would be enough. From a small Detroit home where her sick mother and siblings depended on her, she fought her way into a powerful Chicago corporation. But behind polished smiles were quiet battles, erased work, hidden traps, and public humiliation. The day she fell in front of everyone, they thought it was over. They were wrong. Someone had seen everything and was about to change her life forever. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe some heroes are willing to look guilty to save the innocent, this story is for you. A thin, gray mist hung over Detroit that morning, the kind that softened the edges of broken buildings and quiet streets. The wind carried the distant hum of traffic and the faint rattle of old windows. It was early, too early for most, but for some, the day had already begun. Maya Brooks was one of them. Maya Brooks was a 23-year-old young black woman with a slender build and medium height, her posture always slightly tense as if she carried invisible weight on her shoulders. Her skin was a warm, deep brown, her face soft but marked by quiet determination. She had dark brown eyes, steady, observant, and often tired, and her natural black hair was usually tied back into a simple practical bun. There was nothing flashy about her appearance. She dressed in clean but worn clothes, often choosing function over style. But what defined Maya most wasn't how she looked. It was how she endured. She stood in the narrow kitchen of their small apartment, carefully pouring the last of the coffee into a chipped mug. The apartment itself was modest, almost fragile, peeling paint along the walls, furniture that had clearly lived through years of use, and a heater that worked only when it felt like it. Behind her, a soft cough echoed from the bedroom. Angela Brooks. Angela Brooks was a 52-year-old woman, once full of life, now worn down by illness. She had been a school teacher for most of her life. A patient, kind woman who believed deeply in education and dignity. She was of average height with a slightly frail frame now, her once strong posture replaced by a gentle stoop. Her skin held the same warm tone as Maya's, but it was now marked with the quiet exhaustion of chronic illness. Her hair, once thick and dark, had faded into soft gray curls that framed her face. Her eyes, still kind, still intelligent, carried both pride and worry. "Maya, you're up already?" Angela's voice was soft, almost apologetic. Maya turned quickly, forcing a small smile. "I have an early shift, Mom. Just making sure everything's ready before I go." Angela nodded, though the concern didn't leave her face. "You don't have to do everything alone." Maya didn't answer right away. She simply picked up the mug and walked toward the bedroom, placing it gently on the small table beside her mother's bed. "I'm not alone," she said quietly. "I've got you. And them." From the other room came the sound of light footsteps, quick, energetic. Jordan Brooks burst into the kitchen like a gust of wind. Jordan Brooks was 10 years old, small for his age but full of restless energy. He had tightly curled black hair, bright, dark brown eyes, and a wide, expressive face that seemed to hold more hope than fear. His clothes were simple, a slightly oversized hoodie and worn sneakers, but he carried himself like someone who believed the world was still full of possibilities. "Maya, guess what?" he said, nearly tripping over his own feet. Maya raised an eyebrow, amused despite herself. "What is it this time?" "I'm going to build robots one day, real ones, the kind that help people. Not the scary kind," he added quickly. Maya smiled, "A real one this time. Engineers build robots, you know." Jordan nodded eagerly. "Yeah, that's what I'm going to be, an engineer." Maya reached out and gently ruffled his hair. "Then you better start with your homework tonight." "I always do," he protested, though his grin said otherwise. From the corner of the room, another quiet presence watched. Lila Brooks. Lila Brooks was 14, taller than Jordan but quieter, more reserved. She had a slim build and a thoughtful expression that often made her seem older than she was. Her long dark hair fell naturally over her shoulders, and her eyes, deep and observant, missed very little. Unlike Jordan, Lila didn't speak her dreams out loud. She carried them carefully, like something fragile. "You forgot your notebook again." Lila said softly, handing Maya a worn folder. Maya blinked, surprised. Thanks, Lila, I would have been in trouble. Lila gave a small nod, her lips curling into a faint smile. I know. For a moment everything felt almost normal, but only for a moment. Maya glanced at the clock. I've got to go. She grabbed her bag, a simple, faded backpack, and headed for the door. Before leaving, she paused, looking back at the small apartment at her family. This was why. Everything she did, every long shift, every sleepless night, it all came back to this room. Outside, the cold air hit her immediately. Detroit in the early morning didn't offer comfort. It offered reality. Maya walked quickly, her steps steady, her mind already racing through the day ahead. Her part-time job at a small grocery store didn't pay much, but it was enough to keep things barely afloat. And then there was everything else. School, applications, Everton Global. The name alone felt distant, like something that belonged to another world. But Maya held on to it, because she had to. That night, long after the city lights dimmed and her siblings had gone to bed, Maya sat alone at the small kitchen table. Her laptop sat in front of her. Old, scratched, unreliable. It flickered as she opened another document. Come on, not tonight, she whispered. The screen froze. Maya closed her eyes briefly, exhaling slowly. Then, knock knock. A soft but familiar sound. She opened the door to find Mr. Lewis standing there. Mr. Harold Lewis was a man in his late 60s, tall but slightly stooped with age. He had a lean frame, dark skin weathered by time, and short gray hair that gave him a quiet, dignified presence. His face carried lines of experience, but his eyes were sharp, observant, thoughtful. He had once worked in IT before retiring, and though he didn't talk much about his past, it showed in the way he handled anything technical, with calm confidence. Machine acting up again? He asked, a faint smile forming. Maya let out a small laugh. It always is. He stepped inside, setting down a small toolkit. Let's see what we can do. Within minutes, he had the laptop open, adjusting something with practiced ease. You've got patience, he said without looking up. Maya leaned against the wall. I don't know if it's patience, or just no other choice. Mr. Lewis glanced at her briefly. Sometimes that's the same thing. The laptop flickered back to life. Maya's eyes lit up. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, really. He waved it off. Just don't forget why you're doing all this. Maya nodded. I won't. Later that night, the apartment was silent. Maya sat at the table again, typing. Line after line. Application after application. Her eyes burned. Her shoulders ached. But she didn't stop. Because somewhere out there, beyond this small apartment, beyond Detroit, was a place called Everton Global. And she believed that if she could just get there, everything might finally change. The email arrived just after midnight. Maya almost didn't check it. Her eyes were heavy, her fingers stiff from hours of typing, and the small kitchen light flickered faintly above her. The apartment was quiet, her mother asleep, her siblings resting for another day of school. For a moment, she considered closing the laptop and giving in to exhaustion, but something made her click. Subject line: Everton Global. Application status. Her breath caught. Maya Brooks leaned closer to the screen, her dark brown eyes scanning the words once, then again, as if afraid they might disappear. We are pleased to inform you. She didn't read the rest right away. Her hand slowly rose to cover her mouth, not out of shock, but relief. The kind that didn't come with noise. The kind that came with stillness. For a few seconds, she just sat there. Then she whispered, barely audible, I did it. The next morning felt different. Detroit still looked the same. Gray sky, quiet streets, tired buildings, but something inside Maya had shifted. She moved faster, lighter, even as she packed her worn backpack and prepared for the day. Angela noticed. You're smiling, her mother said gently from the bed. Maya hesitated, then handed her the printed email. Angela adjusted her glasses, reading slowly. As she reached the end, her expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, her eyes filled with something brighter than worry. "You got in," she said, voice trembling. Maya nodded. "I got in." Jordan ran into the room before either of them could say more. "What happened? Why are you both— Wait, what is that?" He grabbed the paper, squinting at it as if decoding a secret message. "You're going to Chicago?" he asked, eyes wide. "For work," Maya said, "at a company." Jordan's face lit up instantly. "That's it. That's the place. You're going to be rich." Maya laughed softly. "Not yet." Lila stood quietly by the door, watching everything unfold. She didn't rush forward like Jordan. She simply met Maya's eyes and gave a small nod. "I knew you would," she said. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in front of a building that didn't feel real. Everton Global. The glass tower stretched into the sky, reflecting the sunlight in sharp, clean lines. People moved in and out with purpose, well-dressed, confident, certain of where they belonged. Maya adjusted the sleeve of her blazer. It was new, or at least new to her. She had bought it second-hand, carefully choosing the one that looked the most professional. She took a breath, then stepped inside. The lobby was bright, polished, almost intimidating in its perfection. Floors that gleamed, voices that echoed just enough to remind you that you were being heard. Maya approached the front desk. The receptionist, a woman in her early 30s with sleek blonde hair and a composed expression, looked up briefly. This was Karen Whitfield. Tall, slim, with sharp features and a voice that carried a quiet authority. She wasn't unkind, but there was a certain distance in the way she interacted with people, as if every conversation was part of a script she had already memorized. "Name?" Karen asked. "Maya Brooks, new hire." Karen typed quickly, then handed her a badge. "Floor 18. Orientation starts in 10 minutes. Maya nodded. "Thank you." The elevator ride felt longer than it was. Maya stood among strangers, people who looked like they had always belonged here. Crisp suits, polished shoes, easy conversations. She stayed quiet, listening, observing. On the 18th floor, the energy shifted. A group of new employees gathered in a conference room, each one trying in their own way to appear confident. That's when Maya first saw Emily Carter. Emily Carter was a woman in her late 20s, tall and slender with long blonde hair styled perfectly over her shoulders. Her blue eyes were bright, and her smile came easily, too easily. She had the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. Her voice was warm, friendly, almost inviting, but there was something about the way she looked at people, quick, measuring, that suggested she was always calculating. Emily approached Maya first. "Hi, you must be new too," she said, extending a hand. Maya replied, shaking it. "Emily, don't worry, everyone's nervous on the first day." Her tone was reassuring, but her eyes flicked briefly over Maya's outfit, her posture, her badge, taking inventory. Before Maya could respond, another voice cut in. "Some of us are more prepared than others." Sophie Reynolds. Sophie Reynolds was in her early 30s, slightly taller than Maya with a lean, sharp frame. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and her features were angular. Defined cheekbones, thin lips, and eyes that rarely softened. She carried herself with confidence, but it wasn't the kind that invited others in. It was the kind that pushed them away. Her tone wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried. Emily gave a small laugh. "Oh, Sophie's just being Sophie." Sophie didn't smile. "I'm being honest." Her gaze lingered on Maya for a second too long before she turned away. Maya said nothing, but she felt it. Orientation passed in a blur of information. Policies, expectations, introductions. By midday, Maya had already learned one thing. This place didn't work the way she expected. Her first assignment came quickly. Too quickly. "Can you stay late and finish this report?" a supervisor asked casually. His name was Richard Hale, a middle-aged man with a broad build, thinning hair, and a voice that always sounded like he was in a hurry. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't particularly attentive either. To him, Employees were tasks, deadlines, numbers. Of course, Maya said. The others left at 5. Maya stayed. Hours passed. The office grew quiet. Lights dimmed. Maya worked, line after line, detail after detail. She checked everything twice, then a third time. When she finally submitted the report, it was nearly midnight. No one responded. The next morning, the report was presented. Not by Maya, by Sophie. Maya sat at her desk watching as Sophie explained the exact structure, the exact data, her work. There was no mention of her name, not even once. Maya felt something tighten in her chest, but she didn't speak. Later that day, as she struggled to access a missing file, someone approached quietly. Daniel Kim. Daniel Kim was a man in his late 20s, average height with a slim, slightly hunched posture that suggested he spent more time with computers than people. His black hair was slightly messy, his glasses simple, and his expression calm but reserved. He didn't draw attention to himself, but he noticed everything. "You're looking for the financial data file?" he asked softly. Maya looked up, surprised. "Yes, it was here yesterday." Daniel nodded, typing something quickly on his tablet. Sometimes files get moved. A moment later, the file reappeared on her screen. Maya blinked. "Thank you." Daniel gave a small shrug. "No problem." He hesitated, then added, "If something goes missing again, just let me know." There was something in his tone, not suspicion, not accusation, but awareness. Maya nodded slowly. "I will." Weeks passed. The pattern didn't change. Maya worked harder than anyone. She stayed later, took on more, but recognition never followed. Her paycheck came, and most of it disappeared just as quickly, sent back home to Detroit. She skipped meals sometimes, walked instead of taking the train, saved everything she could. Because back home, they needed her. One night, as she sat alone in her small, rented room in Chicago, Maya checked her bank account. Then her phone. A message from Jordan. "I got an A in math." Maya smiled. Then another message, from Lila. "Mom had a good day today." Maya closed her eyes briefly. That was enough. It had to be. She looked out the window. Chicago stretched before her, bright, endless, indifferent. Maya Brooks stood there quietly. She had made it through the door. But something told her this was only the beginning. The rhythm of Maya's life in Chicago settled into something that looked stable from the outside, but felt increasingly suffocating from within. Every morning, she arrived before most employees. The office lights would still be dim, the silence broken only by the faint hum of computers waking up. Maya liked those moments. There was no tension yet, no eyes watching, no quiet judgments lingering in the air. But that peace never lasted long. By mid-morning, the office transformed. Voices filled the space. Conversations overlapped. Laughter echoed from clusters of coworkers who moved easily within circles Maya was never invited into. Maya Brooks sat at her desk, focused, her fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. Her posture remained straight, disciplined, but her eyes had grown sharper, more cautious than before. She had learned quickly that effort alone did not guarantee fairness. Across the room, Sophie Reynolds stood near a glass meeting area, speaking confidently to a group. Her voice carried, calm but authoritative. "And by restructuring the reporting model, we can increase efficiency by at least 12%. Maya froze for a brief second. That was her idea, not just similar, identical. The same phrasing, the same structure. She slowly looked up. Sophie stood tall, composed, completely at ease. Her expression was controlled, her tone professional, but there was a subtle edge in the way she held herself, as if she knew exactly what she was doing and didn't feel the need to hide it. Emily Carter stood nearby, nodding along. Emily's expression was supportive, her smile polished and effortless. She occasionally added small comments, just enough to seem involved, never enough to take responsibility. Her presence felt like a mirror that reflected whatever benefited her most. Maya said nothing, but something inside her shifted again. Later that afternoon, Maya checked her inbox. Empty. She frowned slightly. That wasn't right. There should have been updates, meeting notes, assignments, revisions. She refreshed the page, still nothing. A few desks away, 2 coworkers were discussing a meeting that had clearly already happened. "Yeah, Richard wants the updated projections by tomorrow," one of them said. Maya's eyes flickered. She hadn't received anything about that meeting, not a single notification. She stood up slowly and approached. "Hey," she said carefully, "was there a meeting this morning about the projections?" The 2 coworkers exchanged a quick glance. One of them, a man named Brian Keller, mid-30s, average build with short sandy hair and a slightly distracted demeanor, shrugged. "Yeah, didn't you get the email?" Maya shook her head. "No?" Brian hesitated. "That's strange." But his tone didn't suggest concern, just inconvenience. "Well, I'm sure someone will fill you in," he added, already turning back to his screen. Maya nodded, though she knew what that meant. No one would. By evening, the office had begun to empty again. Maya stayed. She always stayed. Papers spread across her desk, notes carefully organized, her laptop glowing faintly in the dimming room. She was rewriting the projections without having been in the meeting. Piece by piece, guessing where she had to, rebuilding what others had already been given. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lila. Mom didn't feel well today. She couldn't get out of bed. Maya's hands paused over the keyboard. For a moment, the office disappeared. All she could see was home, her mother lying still, Jordan trying to act strong, Lila caring more than she should. Maya exhaled slowly, then typed back. "I'll send more money this week. Make sure she rests." She didn't mention that she had already cut everything she could. There was nothing left to cut. The next day, things didn't improve. They escalated. Maya was assigned 3 separate tasks, each with overlapping deadlines. Richard Hale barely looked at her when he spoke. "I need these done by tomorrow morning," he said, placing the files on her desk. Maya glanced at them. "This is all for one report." Richard nodded absently. "Just prioritize." Then he walked away. Maya stared at the stack. It wasn't about prioritizing, it was about surviving it. By midday, the pressure had built into something physical. Her shoulders tightened. Her head throbbed slightly, and still, no acknowledgement, no support. Only more expectations. At some point, her system froze again. The screen flickered, then went blank. Maya leaned back slightly, closing her eyes. "Not now." She reached for the keyboard, trying to restart it. But before she could, a quiet voice. "Hold on." Daniel Kim stepped beside her desk. He moved with the same quiet presence as always, his expression neutral but attentive. He adjusted his glasses slightly as he leaned in, examining the screen. "You've been working on this for a while?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Most of the day." Daniel frowned slightly, not in frustration but in recognition. "Give me a second." His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, opening something Maya didn't recognize. Within moments, the screen came back. Not just back, restored. Maya blinked. "My files." "They're still there," Daniel said. "They were moved to a temporary directory." Maya looked at him. "Moved?" Daniel hesitated. "Sometimes the system behaves unexpectedly." His tone was careful, measured. Maya studied him for a moment. "You've seen this before," she said quietly. Daniel didn't answer directly, but he didn't deny it either. "If anything else disappears," he said, stepping back, "let me know sooner." Maya nodded. "Thank you." He gave a small nod in return, then walked away. That evening, as Maya packed up her things, she noticed something else. 2 coworkers whispering. Not loudly, but not quietly enough. "She just tries too hard. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing." Maya didn't turn, didn't react, but she heard every word. Back in her small rented room, the silence felt heavier than usual. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her phone in her hands. Another message. From Jordan. I'm helping Lila with her homework now. Maya smiled faintly. Then another. Don't worry about us, just do your best. Her smile faded, because that was exactly what she was doing. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. She stood and walked to the window. Chicago at night was different from Detroit. Brighter, faster, colder. The city didn't slow down. It didn't notice who was struggling. Maya pressed her hand lightly against the glass. She had thought getting here would be the hardest part, but now, she understood, getting in was only the beginning. Staying. That was the real challenge. The announcement came on a Monday morning, just as the office settled into its usual rhythm of quiet tension and unspoken competition. Maya had barely logged into her system when Richard Hale appeared beside her desk, a stack of folders in his hand and impatience already written across his face. There's a client conference at the end of the week, he said without greeting. Big one. Senior investors. We need everything perfect. He placed the folders down. You'll handle the preparation materials, product summaries, data reports, presentation documents. All of it. Maya looked at the stack. It was thick. Too thick. All of it? She asked, her voice calm but careful. Richard nodded, already turning away. You've been handling similar tasks, haven't you? Just make sure nothing goes wrong. And just like that, the responsibility was hers. No team, no support, just expectation. Across the room, Sophie Reynolds glanced over briefly, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp. Emily Carter stood beside her, arms folded lightly, her lips forming a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Maya understood immediately. This wasn't just an assignment. It was a test. The following days blurred together. Maya arrived earlier than usual and left later than anyone else. The office lights became her constant companion, bright in the morning, dim and distant at night. She worked through everything methodically. Product descriptions, financial projections, client-specific summaries. Each document required precision, clarity, and consistency. Every detail mattered. Every number had to align, and Maya treated it like it did. On the second day, a new presence entered the workflow. Clara Bennett. Clara Bennett was a project coordinator in her late 20s, with a medium build and shoulder-length auburn hair that she often tucked behind one ear when she was thinking. She had soft features and a calm, slightly cautious demeanor. Unlike others, Clara didn't dominate conversations. She observed more than she spoke. There was a quiet kindness in the way she interacted with people, but also a hesitation, as if experience had taught her to be careful about where she stood. I heard you're handling the conference prep, Clara said one afternoon, standing near Maya's desk. Maya nodded. Yes. Clara glanced at the stack of documents. That's a lot for one person. Maya gave a small, tired smile. I'll manage. Clara hesitated, then lowered her voice slightly. If you need help organizing the client list, I can show you a shortcut. Maya looked at her, surprised. That would help, thank you. Clara nodded quickly, almost as if she didn't want to be seen offering assistance. I'll send it to you. It wasn't much, but it was something. By the third day, the pressure had intensified. Maya's desk had become a controlled chaos of notes, drafts, and revisions. Her laptop, old, unreliable, struggled to keep up with the constant processing. The system lagged. Files took longer to open. Sometimes they didn't open at all. Still, she pushed forward. That evening, Daniel Kim approached again. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he stood beside her desk, watching the screen for a moment. You've been accessing a lot of files recently, he said quietly. Maya nodded. Conference prep. Daniel adjusted his glasses. There's been unusual activity on your account. Maya paused. What kind of activity? Daniel hesitated. Access logs, multiple entries, not all from your login times. Maya's fingers stilled on the keyboard. You mean someone else is accessing my files? Daniel didn't answer directly. I'm not saying that, he said carefully. Just be cautious. Maya looked at him. Can you track it? Daniel shook his head slightly, not without raising questions. There it was again, that line, that invisible boundary no one wanted to cross. Maya nodded slowly. I understand. But she didn't, not really. That night, Maya stayed later than ever. The office was almost empty now, the silence stretching across the floor like a weight. She leaned forward, eyes focused, fingers moving quickly as she finalized the last sections of the presentation files. Everything was nearly done. Just a few final adjustments, a few final checks. She saved the document, then opened it again. Blank. Maya blinked. No. She checked another file, also blank. Another, gone. Her breathing slowed, not out of calm, but disbelief. She navigated through the folders. Everything was gone. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't think. Then she started clicking. Faster, searching, refreshing. Nothing. Her work, days of it, had vanished. Maya leaned back slowly, her hands falling into her lap. The office around her felt colder, quieter, too quiet. She looked at the screen again, as if staring long enough might bring the files back. It didn't. Footsteps. Daniel. He stopped when he saw her expression. What happened? Maya's voice was steady, but only just. The files, they're gone. Daniel moved quickly, pulling up system panels, checking directories, scanning logs. His expression tightened. There was access, he said. Maya looked at him. Can you recover them? Daniel paused, then shook his head. Not from here. Silence settled between them. Maya nodded once. Okay. No anger, no panic, just acceptance. Daniel watched her for a moment. You're going to redo them, he said. It wasn't a question. Maya looked back at the screen. Yes. The first night passed in a blur. Maya rewrote everything from memory, every detail, every structure. Her eyes burned, her shoulders ached. But she didn't stop. At some point past midnight, her phone rang. Lila. Maya answered immediately. Hey! On the other end, Lila's voice was different. Tight, shaking. Maya, I didn't want to tell you, but they said I might not be able to stay in school if we don't pay the fees this week. Maya closed her eyes. How much? Lila hesitated, then said the number. It wasn't small. Maya's grip on the phone tightened slightly. I'll take care of it, she said. Maya, you already send so much. I said I'll take care of it. There was silence. Then a quiet, okay? The call ended. Maya sat there for a moment, then turned back to her screen. Her expression didn't change, but something inside her had hardened. The second night was worse. Fatigue settled deeper. Her movements slowed, but her focus sharpened. She no longer checked the time, didn't think about sleep, didn't think about anything except finishing. By early morning, the files were complete again. Every page, every number, every detail, Maya saved them, then saved them again. And again. She leaned back slightly, her eyes closing for just a second, not to rest, just to breathe. Outside, the city was beginning to wake. Inside, Maya Brooks remained at her desk. Alone, exhausted, but still standing. The morning of the conference arrived with a sharp, unforgiving clarity. Chicago's sky was pale and cold, sunlight reflecting off glass towers in clean blinding streaks. Inside Everton Global, everything moved faster than usual. Voices were louder, footsteps quicker. Every detail, every second mattered. Maya Brooks stood near the printing station on the 18th floor, her hands steady despite the exhaustion that had settled deep into her bones. She hadn't slept. Not really. 2 nights of relentless work had left her drained, her eyes slightly shadowed, her movements more deliberate than usual. But the files were complete. That was what mattered. She held the stack of documents carefully, freshly printed, neatly aligned, each a page representing hours of effort rebuilt from nothing. This was her responsibility, and she would see it through. Around her, the office had transformed. Employees moved with purpose, adjusting ties, checking schedules, reviewing last-minute details. The conference was being held in the main lobby, a wide, open space with polished marble floors and high ceilings that amplified every sound. Clients had already begun to arrive. Among them was Thomas Green. Thomas Green was a man in his early 60s, tall with a slightly heavy build, his silver hair combed neatly back. His face carried the confidence of someone who had spent decades in business, measured, composed, used to being listened to. His eyes were sharp but not unkind, scanning his surroundings with quiet evaluation. He stood near the entrance, speaking with another investor, his tone calm, his posture relaxed. Nearby, a younger woman adjusted her phone camera, recording small clips of the event. This was Rachel Dunn, a social media coordinator in her mid-20s, petite with straight brown hair and quick, curious eyes. She had a habit of documenting everything, moments, reactions, impressions, often without considering the weight those moments might carry later. The atmosphere felt important, controlled, until it wasn't. Maya stepped out of the elevator and into the main lobby, holding the documents close. She moved carefully, aware of the polished floor beneath her shoes, aware of the eyes around her, even if most of them weren't looking directly. She just needed to reach the presentation area. That was all. Behind her, two figures approached, Emily Carter and Sophie Reynolds. Emily's expression was composed as always, her posture relaxed, her movements graceful. To anyone watching, she looked like the picture of professionalism. Sophie, beside her, walked with sharper intent. Her gaze was fixed ahead, her lips pressed into a thin line. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. It happened in a second. A step, a shift, a foot placed just slightly out of place. Maya didn't see it, she felt it. Her balance broke forward. The world tilted. And then, impact. The sound echoed louder than it should have, paper scattered across the marble floor, sliding outward in all directions, white sheets spreading like fragments of something broken. For a moment, everything froze. Then came the voices. Oh my God, what just happened? Did she drop everything? Phones lifted, cameras turned. Rachel Dunn instinctively stepped closer, her phone already recording. Maya pushed herself up slowly, her hands brushing against the cold surface as she steadied herself. Her heart was pounding, not from pain, but from the sudden weight of attention. She looked around, the documents, everywhere. Before she could move, Sophie's voice cut through the air, sharp, cold. What are you doing? Maya looked up. Sophie stood over her, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of irritation and something else, something closer to disdain. This is the most important event of the quarter, and you can't even carry papers properly? Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Emily stepped forward, her tone softer, but no less pointed. Maya, this is really careless, she said, shaking her head slightly. We trusted you with this. The word trusted hung in the air like an accusation. Around them, reactions formed. Some clients exchanged uncomfortable glances. Thomas Green's expression tightened slightly, not in anger, but in observation. Others looked away, unwilling to get involved, and some watched. Curious. Detached. Maya didn't respond. She didn't defend herself, didn't argue. She simply lowered herself back down and began picking up the papers, one by one, carefully, deliberately. Her hands moved steadily, even as her surroundings filled with whispers. Unbelievable. Who put her in charge? This is why details matter. Rachel's phone remained raised, capturing everything. The fall, the confrontation, the silence. A few steps away, Daniel Kim stood frozen. His eyes moved from the scattered papers to Sophie, then to Maya. His hands clenched slightly at his sides. He took a step forward. Then, Daniel. The voice stopped him. Richard Hale. Richard stood near the edge of the crowd, his expression tight, his tone low but firm. Not now. Daniel hesitated. His gaze returned to Maya, then back to Richard. Slowly, reluctantly, he stepped back. Maya continued gathering the documents. Her fingers brushed against the edges of the pages, aligning them again, restoring order where it had been broken. Her breathing was steady now, controlled. She didn't look at Sophie, didn't look at Emily, didn't look at anyone. One of the pages slid slightly farther than the others. Maya reached for it. Her hand paused for a brief second as she noticed something. A footprint, faint, but there, pressed across the edge of the paper. She didn't react. She simply picked it up and added it to the stack. The voices began to fade. The moment passed, at least on the surface. People returned to their conversations, to their roles, to the event, but the phones remained. The recordings remained. And somewhere, already, the moment was spreading. Maya stood up, the documents now gathered in her hands once again. Not perfect, but intact. She adjusted them carefully. Then, without a word, she walked forward. Past the crowd, past the whispers, past the eyes that followed her. Behind her, Emily exhaled lightly. "Well," she said quietly, "that was unfortunate." Sophie didn't respond. Her gaze followed Maya for a moment longer. Then she turned away. At the far end of the lobby, near a quiet seating area, someone else had been watching. A woman. Older. Still, she hadn't moved during the entire incident, hadn't spoken, hadn't reacted, but her eyes had never left the scene. She sat with her hands resting calmly in her lap, her posture straight despite her age. There was something about her presence, something composed, something observant, something patient. Maya reached the presentation area. She placed the documents down carefully, straightened them, smoothed out the edges, then stepped back. Her face revealed nothing. No anger, no embarrassment, no defeat, only quiet control. The conference continued, as if nothing had happened. By the time the conference reached its final segment, the earlier incident had already settled into the background, at least on the surface. Conversations had resumed, presentations had been delivered, and the polished rhythm of corporate professionalism seemed to have reassembled itself. But not everything had been forgotten. Maya Brooks stood near the edge of the presentation area, slightly behind the main speakers, her hands resting calmly at her sides. Her posture remained steady, her expression composed, though the exhaustion beneath her eyes had deepened. She had completed her part, delivered what was required. No acknowledgement, no recognition, but no visible failure either. To most people in the room, she was invisible again, and yet, not to everyone. At the front of the room, Richard Hale adjusted his tie, preparing to close the session. His voice carried the same rehearsed confidence as before, though there was a subtle tension in his movements now. The earlier disruption had not gone unnoticed by the clients, even if it had been quietly buried beneath the flow of the event. "Thank you all for attending," Richard began, his tone measured. "We appreciate your time and look forward to building strong partnerships moving forward. Before you conclude." The voice was calm, clear, and it cut through the room without force. Every conversation stopped. Heads turned. The older woman who had been sitting quietly throughout the event slowly rose to her feet. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes was a 59-year-old African-American woman with a presence that didn't demand attention, but commanded it the moment she chose to speak. She was of average height, her posture straight and unwavering, her movements deliberate. Her skin was a deep, elegant brown, her face marked with fine lines that spoke not of age, but of experience. Her silver-gray hair was styled neatly, framing her face with quiet dignity. Her eyes, sharp, observant, and steady, held the kind of awareness that came from having seen too much to be easily misled. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. The room adjusted around her. Richard paused. "Mrs. Hayes?" he said, forcing a polite smile. "Of course." Eleanor stepped forward slightly, her gaze sweeping across the room before settling briefly, very briefly on Maya. "I have been listening carefully," she said, "to the presentations, to the discussions." She paused. "And to what wasn't said." A subtle shift moved through the audience. "Uncertainty," Eleanor continued, her voice steady. "This morning I arrived early, earlier than most." Her eyes moved, not accusing, not aggressive, but precise. "I witnessed an incident in your lobby." Silence deepened. Richard's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Eleanor's gaze did not leave him. "A young woman," she continued, "carrying materials clearly prepared with care, was caused to fall." No one spoke. No one moved. "And instead of assistance," Eleanor said, her tone sharpening slightly, "she was met with criticism, publicly, dismissively." A murmur rippled faintly through the room. Emily Carter stood still, her expression carefully neutral, though the tightness in her jaw betrayed something deeper. Sophie Reynolds remained composed, but her shoulders had grown rigid, her gaze fixed forward. Eleanor turned slightly, her attention shifting. "That young woman," she said, "is the only person here today who demonstrated true professionalism." The words landed quietly, but they carried weight. Maya didn't react immediately. She simply stood where she was, still. Listening, Eleanor continued. She did not argue, she did not deflect blame, she did not disrupt the event. Her voice softened, but only slightly. She continued her work. A pause. "That is integrity." From the side of the room, another voice spoke. "I agree." Thomas Green stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "I saw it as well," he said. "And I've been in enough rooms to recognize when someone is being tested unfairly." He glanced briefly at Maya. She handled it better than most experienced professionals would have. The tension shifted again. What had been silent observation was now becoming acknowledgement. Richard cleared his throat, stepping forward. "We appreciate your feedback, Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Green. However, I assure you the situation has been addressed internally." "No," Eleanor interrupted calmly, "it hasn't." Richard stopped. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "Because addressing something internally does not erase what was seen externally." The words settled heavily. At the edge of the room, Daniel Kim stepped forward. His movement was hesitant at first, but deliberate. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet but clear. All eyes turned to him. Daniel adjusted his glasses slightly, his hands steady despite the attention. "I believe there is additional information that may be relevant." Richard's expression tightened. "Daniel, this isn't the time." "It is," Eleanor said. Daniel nodded once, then held up his tablet. "I monitor system access logs," he said. "Recently, there have been multiple unauthorized entries into Maya Brooks's work files." A visible reaction moved through the room. Maya's eyes shifted, just slightly, toward him. Daniel continued. "These entries occurred outside her login times. Files were moved. Some were deleted." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Richard's voice came quickly. "That's a serious claim." Daniel met his gaze. "It's a documented one." He turned the tablet slightly, allowing Eleanor and others nearby to see the logs. Timestamps, access points, patterns, not speculation, evidence. From the audience, another client spoke up. A woman in her early 50s, Linda Matthews, short, composed, with sharp eyes and a direct manner of speaking, leaned forward slightly. "If that's accurate," she said, "then this isn't just a personnel issue, it's a management failure." Others nodded, quietly. But clearly, Emily's composure faltered for just a second. Sophie remained still, but her silence now felt different. Not controlled, contained. Eleanor straightened slightly. "I came here today prepared to make a decision," she said. Richard exhaled carefully. "And I have." The room seemed to hold its breath. "I will be investing in this project," Eleanor said. A flicker of relief passed across several faces, but it didn't last. "On one condition." Her gaze moved, not to Richard, not to the leadership, to Maya. "Maya Brooks will lead it." The words settled into the room like a line drawn across everything that had happened before. No one spoke. No one moved. For a moment, the entire space felt suspended. Richard's voice came slowly. "That's a significant decision." Eleanor nodded. "It is." "And if that condition isn't met?" he asked. Eleanor's expression didn't change. "Then neither is my investment." The shift was immediate, subtle but unmistakable. Power had moved. Maya stood still, her mind catching up to the moment. She hadn't expected this, hadn't asked for it, hadn't even imagined it. And yet, here it was. Across the room, Emily lowered her gaze. Sophie's posture tightened further, her expression now unreadable. Richard turned slightly, speaking to someone behind him in a low voice. Urgent, controlled, but no longer confident. Eleanor took her seat again. Calm, certain, as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but everything had changed. The decision didn't settle quietly. It moved through Everton Global like a shift in air pressure, subtle at first, then undeniable. By the next morning, the building felt different. Not visibly, not structurally, but in the way people spoke, in the way they looked at one another, in the way certain conversations stopped when Maya Brooks walked into the room. Maya stood outside a glass office on the 22nd floor, a place she had never been invited to before. The hallway was quieter here, the design more refined. Fewer desks, more space, the kind of environment reserved for decisions that shaped everything below. She adjusted the sleeve of her blazer, the same one she had worn on her first day. Only now, it felt different. "Come in." The voice belonged to Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan Pierce was the regional director of Everton Global, a man in his early 50s with a tall, composed frame and a presence that balanced authority with restraint. His hair was neatly trimmed, streaked with gray at the temples, and his eyes, cool, observant, missed very little. He had built his career on control, on precision, on never allowing emotion to interfere with business. But today, there was something else in his expression. Caution. Maya stepped inside. Jonathan gestured toward the chair across from him. "Please sit." Maya sat, her posture straight, her expression calm. Jonathan folded his hands on the desk. "I'll be direct," he said. "The company has accepted Mrs. Hayes's condition." Maya didn't react immediately. Jonathan continued. "You are being assigned as project manager for the Hayes Investment Initiative." Silence. Not disbelief, not shock, just a quiet acknowledgement of what had already begun to unfold. "This is a significant responsibility," Jonathan added, "and a significant shift." Maya met his gaze. "I understand." Jonathan studied her for a moment as if trying to measure something beyond her words. "We will also be conducting internal reviews," he said, "regarding recent irregularities." Maya nodded once. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. The transition wasn't smooth. It wasn't meant to be. Some people adapted quickly because they had to. Others resisted. Quietly. Carefully. But the structure had changed. And everyone knew it. Maya's new workspace overlooked the city. Chicago stretched endlessly beyond the glass, steel, movement, light. It was a view that symbolized possibility, but also distance. She didn't spend much time looking at it. There was too much to do. Her team was small at first, deliberately so. She chose carefully. Daniel Kim was the first. He stood in the doorway of her office that afternoon, his usual quiet demeanor unchanged, though there was a subtle uncertainty in the way he held himself. "You wanted to see me?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Yes." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I need someone who understands the systems," she said, "someone who notices things others ignore." Daniel adjusted his glasses slightly. "That's specific." Maya allowed a small smile. "So are you." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'm in." The second addition was Clara Bennett. Clara stood more confidently this time, though her cautious nature hadn't disappeared entirely. She still moved with careful awareness, still chose her words thoughtfully. "You don't have to say yes," Maya told her. Clara shook her head. "I do," she said quietly. I've seen what happens when people don't." There was something deeper behind her words, something shaped by experience. Maya didn't press, she simply nodded. The work began immediately, and this time, it was different. Maya didn't assign tasks the way they had been assigned to her. She explained them. Context, purpose, clarity. She made sure everyone understood not just what they were doing, but why. It slowed things down at first, but then it strengthened everything. Word spread quickly, not loudly, but steadily, that things were changing, that expectations were still high, but the environment was different, more open, more structured, more fair. Not everyone welcomed it. Emily Carter remained professional, her tone unchanged, her smile still polished. But there was a distance now, a careful separation. Sophie Reynolds was quieter, more reserved. The sharp edges of her confidence had softened, not into kindness, but into caution. The internal review had begun, and no one knew where it would end. Weeks passed, then months. The project moved forward, and it succeeded. Not dramatically, not with spectacle, but with consistency, with precision, with integrity. Outside the office, Maya's life began to shift as well. The first transfer she made home after her promotion was larger than any before. Angela Brooks received treatment, proper treatment, not temporary solutions, not delayed care, real support. Her strength began to return, slowly but steadily. Jordan's messages changed, from small updates to excitement. "I joined the robotics club. We're building something real this time." Lila's voice, once quiet with worry, grew steadier. "I don't have to miss school anymore." Maya didn't celebrate, not in the way people expected. She didn't forget where she came from, didn't forget what it felt like to be overlooked, to be dismissed, to be tested without reason. So she built something, not for herself, for others. The internship program started small. Just a few students at first, young people from backgrounds that looked like hers, sounded like hers, carried the same quiet determination. One of them was Marcus Hill. Marcus was 19, tall and lean, with a restless energy that hadn't yet found direction. His hair was short, his posture slightly uncertain, but his eyes, sharp, curious, revealed a mind that moved quickly. He had grown up in a neighborhood not unlike Maya's, and like her, he had learned early that opportunity was not always given. "You really think I can do this?" he asked during his first week. Maya looked at him. "I know you can," she said. Marcus nodded slowly, and for the first time, he believed it too. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes remained involved. Not constantly, not visibly, but consistently. She met with Maya once a month. Short meetings, focused conversations. She didn't give instructions. She asked questions. And in those questions, there was guidance. "You're not just building a project," Eleanor said during one meeting. "You're building a standard." Maya understood. One evening, long after the office had quieted, Maya stood by the window of her office. The city below moved as it always had, unchanged, indifferent. But she was no longer standing at the edge of it. She was part of it now. Her phone rang. "Maya?" Angela's voice stronger, lighter. Maya smiled. "I'm here, Mom." "We're proud of you," Angela said. Maya looked out at the lights, at the reflection of herself in the glass. "I'm just getting started," she replied. She ended the call, stood there for a moment longer. Then, she smiled. Not because everything had been easy, not because everything was perfect, but because she had made it through, without becoming what tried to break her. At the end of Maya Brooks' journey, the lesson is simple, but powerful. In everyday life, not every struggle will be loud. Many of the hardest battles happen quietly, behind closed doors, in moments when no one is watching. Maya teaches us that persistence can outlast prejudice. Even when others doubt you, overlook you, or try to push you down, your consistency still matters. Your effort still counts. True value does not need to be loud or dramatic to be real. It shows in how you work, how you treat others, and how you keep going when things feel unfair. Maya did not fight back with anger. She chose dignity. She chose discipline. And in the end, that is what made the difference. Another important lesson is this: never underestimate the power of one person who chooses to see the truth. Mrs. Hayes changed everything, not because she was the most powerful voice in the room, but because she was willing to speak when it mattered. In your life, you can be that person for someone else. You can choose fairness. You can choose courage. At the same time, this story is also a reminder. How we treat people matters. Small actions, words, and attitudes can build someone up or quietly tear them down. We should all reflect on ourselves. Are we creating opportunities for others, or are we part of the pressure they carry? So, take this story into your daily life. Be patient. Be strong. Stay consistent. And when you see someone being treated unfairly, do not stay silent. Do what is right, even when it is uncomfortable. If this story touched you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what lesson stayed with you the most. And if you believe that quiet strength can change lives, consider subscribing so we can continue sharing stories like this. May God bless you, protect your path, and give you strength in every challenge you face. If you believe in that, type Amen in the comments and stand with others who choose hope, courage, and kindness every day.